A very good afternoon to all the students of class 12. Well, today I'm going to do the question answers of Avon Streisand O level, the second part as I had mentioned in the last video. So I take up the question answers. The first question, what kind of a person was Evans? So Evans was a habitual and a congenital kleptomaniac. Currently, he was serving a term in the Oxford prison. He had been imprisoned earlier, but he had broken jail thrice. And he was a master planner. But the positive aspect about him was that he was very sociable and he knew how to keep intimate contacts at the right quarters. And he had a whole lot of friends who finally did help him in escaping from the jail. And as in the lesson, the governor had mentioned to the secretary of the examination that he is a pleasant sort of a chap and not at all violent by nature. Second question. The story, Avon Streisand O level, tells us about the governor making inquiries about the exam, when he called up the secretary of the examination board in March, even though the exam was supposed to be somewhere in June. So what does that imply? So we can say that within his heart of hearts, the governor actually was a little worried, and he was acutely conscious of the fact that Evans was a master planner and a master prison breaker because he had already broken jail thrice. So there was an element of anxiety in his mind and he did not want to, take chances. So that is why he wanted to find out about all the relevant details and to understand everything before he would actually let him sit for the exam. So in a way, he was trying to take all precautionary measures. Question 3. How do you account for the fact that Evans selected German only for the O-level examination? Now, for this, we can actually give, two reasons. The first one was that he was the only candidate who had opted for this subject. There was no other candidate. And secondly, he had an excellent rapport with the German tutor who would eventually be very, very instrumental in his escape. So he rightly opted for German. Next question. What different queries does the secretary of the examination board make from the governor before conducting the examination for Evans, and why? The secretary of the examination, he was apprehensive about the smooth and fair conduct of the examination and the safety of the invigilator whom they would appoint. So that is why the secretary inquired from the governor regarding the availability of a suitable room, and he also wanted to know if the candidate was violent and whether he could be kept incommunicado. Excuse me. Next question. Why do you think Evans does not become conversant or fluent with German in spite of having been taught for more than 6 months? Now, we all know that Evans does not seem to have learnt much about German, as the teacher had to explain the meaning of a simple German expression like Guten-Gluck. Now, in the spelling is G-U-T-E-N-G-L-U-C-K, but the pronunciation is Guten-Gluck, which actually meant good luck. And he had to explain what it is. This is because the teacher was basically an accomplice. Last time I had told you, the partners in crime, anybody, we call them an accomplice. So he was an accomplice of Evans, and as a matter of fact, there was hardly any teaching and learning of German, but they were making plans for his escape from prison. And learning German was a non-issue. That was not important. Do you think Evan's statement, "I may surprise everybody," has some special significance? Last time in my explanation, I had told you that his this statement was a little ironical, because when the teacher had said that he wasn't too sure whether he would qualify or clear the exam, he had said, "I might surprise everybody." So that was ironical, because Evan seems to be telling his teacher that he may prove to be a dark horse and he may surprise everybody by doing well in the examination. But in reality, what he meant was, it was like a forewarning that he's going to jolt everybody by the masterminded plan that he had devised to escape from the prison. Okay. Who were the two visitors Evans received in the morning of the day of the examination? The two visitors that Evans received in the morning of the examination were the two prison officers, namely Mr. Jackson, who was a senior prison officer of the prison's D wing, and then the second one was a burly, surly, well-built looking man called Stephens, who was a new recruit. Okay. Knowing fully well how sharp Evans is, shouldn't Jackson have told him to remove his bobble hat in his presence? So what do you conclude about Jackson? So we can say Jackson is credulous. Credulous means he believes others easily. So Jackson is credulous and he is gullible, and he believes Evans when he tells him that it is a sort of a lucky charm, as he has to sit for an exam that day. So he does not order Evans to remove it, and in this way he commits a big blunder, and which will cost him dearly later on. Okay, next question. What made Evans keep his hair short? Now, Evans escaped from the prison. It was a well-devised or well-thought-of plan, and the duplicate McLeary, who was, an accomplice of Evans, who was to invigilate during the O-level German examination, had short hair. So in order to give a practical shape to the plan, Evans' hair had to look like McLeary's. Hence, Evans had clipped them very short. Okay. Which traits of Evans' character are exhibited from his understanding about Jackson that he had a tiny core of compassion for him? A slight, he had a soft corner for him. And so what do we understand about Evans' character? Evans' character analysis is really good. It's superb. His psychological insight, coupled with a keen sense of observation, makes him rightly analyze that Jackson was a little compassionate at heart with him. And so he very correctly assesses that Jackson has a tiny core of compassion for him. So he's a good judge of character. Next question. Why do you think Jackson asked Evans to remove the pin-ups from the cell? Now, the pin-ups are the pictures and photos that had been, put up on the wall. And they were pictures and photos of attractive persons, particularly film stars and models. And Jackson knew that a parson, a priest, would be visiting the cell as the invigilator, and this kind of an exhibition or this kind of a show of such pictures was unpalatable. That was out of place and unbecoming, as a priest would be coming. So all those things were out of place. So that is why he gave instructions that everything of this should be removed from the walls. Next question. McLeary had a semi-inflated rubber ring. What explanation does McLeary give about it? What did it actually contain? Now, the semi-inflated rubber ring actually contained the pig's blood. They had filled it up with pig's blood, which they would need later on to show, that injury and that harm when Evans is actually sprawled out on the chair. So at that time they needed that blood, so they couldn't carry it otherwise, so they very cleverly carried it in that rubber tube. And the explanation given was that McCleary, the invigilator, had to sit for quite some time, and as he was suffering from piles, so he needed that ring to sit on and be comfortable. Next question. The governor granted Evans' request to shift Stephens from the cell during the examination, and it proved to be a big blunder. Do you agree? Support your answer. So when he was about to begin with his exam, so Evans had pointed out that, he wouldn't be comfortable writing the exam. So he made a request. So as the governor also proved to be gullible, G-U-L-L-I-B-L-E, as the governor also proved to be gullible, he saw logic and in Evans' request that, to write an exam, and Stephens would be a kind of a hindrance, standing there all the time. So he actually asked him to shift out from there, and this was definitely a big blunder. Next question. Who do you think made a call regarding a correction in the question paper? What did it really want to convey? So at 9:40 a.m., the governor got a call from the assistant secretary with special responsibility for modern languages regarding the correction in the question paper. Actually, or presumably, we can say that it was an accomplice, again a partner in crime, an accomplice of Evans, who was in the office of the Secretary of Examination Board, who wanted to tell Evans that after his escape from prison, he should go to Hotel Golden Lion. And the information was meant for McCleary also. Next question. What significance would you attach to the supposed phone call from the magistrate's court? Was it genuine or just a ploy of Evans' gang? What was the purpose of the call? Now, this call that had come from the magistrate court was also a hoax call. The master planners had once again misled the gullible governor by telling him that it was a call from the magistrate's office demanding a prison van and a couple of prison officers in connection with a remand case. As a matter of fact, the van was needed to make the final escape of Evans from the hotel possible. Next question. Why did Evans drape a blanket round his shoulder? What did Stephens think about it? Now, in between intervals, of Stephen peeping through the keyhole into the cell, Evans was changing into the parson's dress to look like McCleary. However, the top collar and the black front of the dress kept slipping off the stud. So in order to conceal his efforts to keep them in place, he draped a blanket round his shoulder. And Stephens was misled because he thought that it was slightly cold in the cell. So that is why maybe Evans wanted to drape the blanket round his shoulders. Okay. 3 minutes before the examination was to be over at 11:22 a.m., there is a call for Stephens from the governor. Is the call genuine? And what is the underlying idea behind this call? Now, this call again was not genuine, as the governor later on talks about it, that he had not made any such call and that he was busy trying to get in touch with the examination branch. The underlying idea behind that call was to take Stephens away for some time to enable Evans to give the finishing touches to his makeup so that he looked like McCleary, spraying the blood all over and hair and, to lie on that chair. So the final, picture that they wanted to create for the policeman, he wanted to carry out that. After having seen McCleary off, Why did Stephen choose to have one last look at Evans? What did he see in the cell? Now, he is shown to be very conscientious and, very obsessive about his duties. So he decided to have one last look at Evans before going for a cup of coffee. But a rude shock awaited him when he peeped, through the peephole, and he saw a man with short hair, presumably McLeary, in a pool of blood sprawling back in Evans' chair. Now, over here, I just want to mention over here, actually they had seen Evans with long hair. So the minute they saw the short hair, the first thing that came to their mind was that this was McLeary. Okay, why did Evans, disguised as McLeary, tell the governor when the latter offered to take him to the hospital? Why was the question paper shown to the governor? Now, McLeary clamored, C-L-A-M-O-U-R-E-D. Clamored means demanding loudly, okay, to demand something loudly. So McLeary clamored to be taken in the police van to follow Evans, as he knew where he had gone. He insisted that he did not want to be hospitalized. Why? Because he was not actually hurt. That was just a picture that had been created with that, the blood and everything. But otherwise, he was absolutely fit and fine. He was all right. And the question paper was shown to the governor intentionally to impress upon him that Evans had befooled everybody. So on purpose, he showed him that question paper. A photocopied sheet had been carefully and cleverly superimposed over the last, originally blank page of the question paper. What was its real purpose? Now, the real purpose of this cleverly superimposed photocopied sheet on the question paper was to give the final details of the escape plan to Evans. It was also meant to make the authorities believe that the wounded man was actually McLeary and that he wanted to help them re-arrest the escapee. Okay. Next question. Jackson is supposed to be a moron, okay, and careless enough to make a stranger's voice on the phone, to be the governor's. He really mistook and he could not recognize the voice. And again, out of sheer frustration, the governor tells the police officer to take the wounded man with him because he's the only one who seems to know what's happening. Don't you think by doing so, the governor himself is a moron? So that's the question. Now, the wounded man is basically Evans, and he's right before him. Of course, he's disguised as McLeary, but the governor, who has spent a number of years at Oxford prison and who's been in this line and who's dealt with criminals over these years, he should have actually learned to examine criminals minutely rather than getting flustered, okay? And so he becomes a greater moron than his subordinates by letting Evans escape from right under his nose. Okay, who is Carter? What does the governor want him to do and why? Now, Carter is the detective superintendent whom the governor has summoned after the supposed escape of Evans from the prison. The governor wants him to accompany the injured man as he's the only one who seems to know what's happening and may be in a position to help them in locating the escapee. Okay, next question. In spite of strict vigilance, how did Evans' friend manage to give the material for disguise in the cell? He had to disguise himself as McLeary Evans. So how did he manage to get in all that stuff? Answer: despite all vigilance, Evans' friend, disguised as McLeary, the invigilator, managed to smuggle the disguised material into the cell with ingenuity, very cleverly. He came wearing 2 Parsons dresses, with black fronts and collars. Apart from that, he also brought an extra pair of spectacles with pebble lenses. And all this was passed on to Evans when Stephen's vigilant eyes were away from the peephole. So he was actually wearing, that's why they say that when Stephens was escorting him out, he felt that the invigilator was looking a little thinner, because earlier on he had those extra layers of clothes which he had actually given to Evans to disguise himself as McLeary. Okay, how did the governor manage to reach Evans in the hotel? The governor finally realized that it was Evans who had gone out with Carter and that he was impersonating McLeary. He was disguised as McLeary. He thought about the 6-digit reference in the index number and the center number, 313/271. And he put the two together, and with the help of the Ordnance Survey map for Oxfordshire, he reached the hotel. So a little bit of intelligence by him was shown here. Do you think Evans, when he entered the hotel room and saw the governor sitting there on the bed, was actually surprised, or he was trying to pretend to look surprised? And give reason in support of your answer. To a certain extent, the surprise seems to be feigned or a pretense, because Evans himself had left the question paper and the correction slip in the cell, which led the governor to reach the hotel. As a matter of fact, Evans was expecting him in the hotel, but he pretended to be caught unaware to befool the gullible, good-for-a-giggle governor still further. Next question. Who do you think is the driver of the van who eventually takes Evans to freedom? Finally, after the hotel, when the handcuffs are removed. So who is the driver? The driver of the prison van who finally throws dust into the eyes of the governor or befools him and leads Evans to freedom is McLeary. Because whenever he utters a word, the writer does not fail to add that he spoke in a broad Scots accent. And the driver too had a broad Scots accent. Hence, there is hardly any doubt left about McLeary being the driver. What were the precautions taken for the smooth conduct of the examination? Okay. Since Evans had already escaped from prison on earlier occasions, that also thrice, there were always a lurking fear, that he might make another attempt to escape. Therefore, all possible precautions were taken to see that the O-level German examination arranged in the prison cell did not provide him with any means of escape. And the governor personally monitored all security arrangements and heavily guarded the recreational block from where the expected prisoner could try to make another break. Then Evans' cell was thoroughly checked by Jackson to ward off the possibility of the presence of any sharp weapons or incriminating material which might hamper the smooth conduct of the examination. Like his nail scissors, his nail file, razor were taken away, everything was taken away, and to keep a strict watch on his activities in the cell during the examination. The governor also got it bugged. I told you last time, bugged means to put in a little miniature microphone, inside to hear the conversation. Then a police officer, Stephens, was posted to keep a constant vigil on his activities, and the invigilator too was frisked, frisking to check the body, was frisked to make sure that he carried no objectionable material with him, which could later on, spell disaster. But everything happened in a meticulous manner, and very, very cleverly everything was planned out and executed also. Reflecting on the story, what do you feel about Evans having the last laugh? Now, despite all the precautions taken by the jail authorities to check Evans' escape from the Oxford prison, this habitual jailbreaker outwits them once again, and he slips out of their hands. Right from the German teacher's entry to the prison, to the last encounter of the governor and Evans in the hotel, everything, made the jail authorities and the police authorities, a laughing stock, okay? And Evans outsmarts them and proves that they are a pack of good-for-giggle officers who are no match to his crafty planning or scheming, okay? They neither verify the German teacher's, whereabouts and his, biodata or something about it to be very sure, nor of McLeary. And Evans carries out all his plans right under their nose without arousing any kind of suspicion at all. Even at the last moment at the hotel where the governor feels that he has finally nabbed him or, caught him, the prisoner dodges him and slips away, and thus Evans definitely has the last laugh. While we condemn the crime, we are sympathetic to the criminal. Is this the reason why prison staff often develops a soft corner for those in custody? Or another way of putting it, this is a kind of a value-based question. How does the story Evans Tries an O-level bring out the virtue of sympathy? Like they say, hate the crime, hate the sin, not the sinner. So crime is, condemnable, but not the criminal. We should not hate the sinner, the person who has committed the sin, but we should hate the sin. Because nobody is born a criminal, things, situations, circumstances, various other things, make one a criminal, okay? And most of the prisoners in custody, they have a pitiful story behind their criminal record. Thus, sometimes the prison staff who meet the convicts daily and constantly interact with them, they kind of develop a rapport with them, R-A-P-P-O-R-T. They kind of develop a rapport with them and over the time period, develop a little soft corner for them with the passage of time. And then sometimes they begin to identify themselves with their pain and suffering, and usually they tend to become sympathetic towards them and try to overlook their irregularities and, try to reach out to them or help them out sometimes, and carrying out some harmless favors for them. So all this, the sympathetic attitude of the staff definitely does crop up, but not always, of course. So something like this has actually transpired here in between Evans and the Oxford prison authorities, particularly the governor and Jackson, okay? The governor has great regard for Evans' intelligence. I mean, despite the fact that he is a jailer, an officer, and he's a criminal, but Evans is so intelligent and such a good planner, and his schemes, the way he was befooling everybody. I mean, heart of hearts, the governor did, admire his intelligence and his wits, okay, and his presence of mind. And in the author's words, Evans and Jackson, they are warm enemies. And somewhere in his heart, Jackson had a tiny core of compassion, and he's also called the little Einstein, okay? So both of them do have a soft corner for Evans. But in the end, of course, their sympathetic attitude towards him proves that though against crime, they had no aversion for the criminal, aversion, hatred, or dislike for the criminal. So I think I have tried to cover most of it. Okay, I'll just do one or two more. Stuart McLeary marches ahead towards the Oxford prison. Do you get a hint here of his not being a genuine invigilator? Now here, when the author writes about McLeary's suitcase, he meaningfully writes that he contains all that he would need for his morning duties. The author has written it in this form. He writes that the suitcase contains all that he would need for his morning duties, including things he would need for invigilation work, a sealed question paper or then envelope, a yellow invigilation form, special authentication card and the like. And the use of the expression morning duties clearly throws a hint that he has some duties which are beyond invigilation work, which he has to perform that day. Obviously, the real morning duties are concerned with the execution of the plan of Evans' successful escape from prison. Apart from the invigilation stuff, which is insignificant for him, he's taking along with him the escape paraphernalia, like the inflated rubber tube, then the double Parsons dress, and he's wearing, the blacks and the collars, and the question paper where a photocopied sheet has been carefully and cleverly superimposed over the last page. So the use of the expression morning duties is very meaningful, and it clearly gives a hint that he is not a genuine invigilator. What idea do you form about McLeary, the invigilator, while he is being searched outside the examination cell? Searched or frisked, okay? Now, during the search outside the examination hall, McLeary keeps himself very, very composed, okay? He maintains his composure, and he doesn't get flustered or, doesn't behave in an abnormal way in this critical situation. He knows that he is abetting, A-B-E-T-T-I-N-G. He knows that he is abetting a crime, abetting in committing a crime. He's helping out in committing a crime, and any ordinary or a normal common individual would have betrayed some kind of nervousness. But he was very calm and composed. He does not get unruffled, okay? Secondly, he believes in thinking in advance the details of all the eventualities, like if they ask him and if certain questions are put across to him, he should be ready with convincing and cogent answers. Convincing and cogent, C-O-G-E-N-T. Like when he's asked about the rubber tube, very cleverly, without getting flustered or showing any signs of nervousness, he immediately says that, like an intelligent man, that he's suffering from hemorrhoids or piles and that he needs the rubber ring to sit comfortably, okay? So, and he knows when to show his assumed annoyance, okay? So when Jackson asks McLeary about the rubber tube, he exhibits the right bit of anger, because he's trying to show that this is a personal kind of a question. So there he does show a little bit of annoyance, but at the right time. And he stage manages his annoyance perfectly well. Last question. Give an account of the blunders committed by the prison authorities which resulted in making Evans' escape plan a success. Okay. So the prison authorities, in their opinion, they had made a foolproof, foolproof arrangements to foil or, any escape efforts by Evans. To foil means to stop, prevent. Yet he made a mockery of the entire system of all that they had done, and he escaped successfully. The officers' vigilance could have checked this jailbreak. And the hatching of this escape plan started with the German tutor's entry, but nobody bothered to verify the whereabouts about this tutor and try to find more about him, okay, and the activities that they carried on in jail. And McCleary's credentials too were not verified properly. Then on the examination day, Jackson allows him, to wear that bobble hat. Otherwise, he would have come to know over there, looking at his short hair, that something hanky-panky was going to happen. Then Jackson shifted Stephens from the cell, and the escape bid could have been foiled, could have been prevented. And Jackson should have searched McCleary thoroughly, and the rubber ring should have been given a closer look. Rather than getting flustered later on, a thorough examination of the wounded man should have been done, and they should not have been so impulsive. And that looking at the person sitting on the chair, they jump to hasty conclusions that he is McCleary. They should have checked the person carefully, and if they had done so, Evans would not have been able to run away from there, or would not have been able to escape. Then the Superintendent Carter's complacency and the governor's inefficiency and their casual approach are unpardonable, okay? And after recapturing Evans, the governor should have personally accompanied him to the jail rather than entrusting him to the occupants of the van. That was, blunder after blunder was committed. So finally, we can say that Evans actually did have the last laugh. So that's all. I think the question answers will make it easier for all of you. Thank you very much for watching, listening. If you have any queries, please do mention, and any chapter in particular that you want to be taken up, please feel free to let me know. Thank you so much, children. God bless you all.